Welcome from the National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization office in Alexandria, Virginia. We're so glad that you joined us this afternoon. With me is Tony Cudner and Rebecca Trout, and I know that they're both going to provide some wonderful and meaningful information about how you can host a member of Congress and have a great veteran-centric event. So just some of the goals we wanted to just touch on real quick, what we're going to go over today. Tony's going to go over how to invite and host a member of Congress. Then Rebecca will talk about how to create and implement a successful veterans ceremony. And then I'll touch a little bit on media and how you can get your local media involved in your event. And then we'll also touch on one successful case study. So with that, I think we're going to begin. Tony, would you like to start?
Thanks, Amanda. Thanks for having me this afternoon. I really appreciate it. The We Honor Veterans program and the Hospice Action Network have been doing presentations like this across a variety of formats for a number of years now. Rebecca and I, partners in crime, have done some version of this at least 2 or 3 times now, and it's been very successful every time. Very excited to hear everybody's questions. So if we can go to the next slide, please. I really want to start by taking a little bit of a step back and painting sort of the stage before we get into some of the nuts and bolts. So, Congress is very interested in how veterans are being served in their communities. They take a keen interest in this, and I think, it comes up from time to time through legislation, and members of Congress are almost across the board always on record as being attuned to the needs of veterans in their communities and wanting to serve them, which is why we've had such success in pairing the We Honor Veterans program with members of Congress. As Amanda mentioned, we're going to do some of that in the case study a little bit later. So just some quick by the numbers. 97 members of the 114th Congress, that's the current Congress that just started this January, have served in the armed forces. That number has declined a little. It historically has been a lot higher than that. As you saw, World War II veterans returning from home. But those numbers are still fairly solid. That's a little less than 20% of Congress is made up of folks who have served in the armed forces. They're keenly interested in what veterans are doing and how veterans are being served back in the district. And as we said, they've reacted overwhelmingly positive to the We Honor Veterans program specifically. It's a home run. Can we go to the next slide, please? When we talk about why you should do this above members of Congress being interested, we think there's really some great benefits of involvement for everybody involved. First and foremost, as everything should be about the patient, the family, and the veteran, who are generally all part of the same unit, is the sense of honor that comes along with having a member of Congress present at the ceremony. And what I mean by that is, we tend to think a lot about what happens on Capitol Hill through the lens of politics. That's how the news media creates a narrative, and that's what gets clicks, what gets headlines. It's sort of what sells. But as much as some people might be a little cynical about it, almost every single member of Congress is in Congress not because they like the limelight, but because they feel a sense of civic duty. There's a real component of public service to being a member of Congress, and that's where the We Honor Veterans angle fits in. Is they get really to offer the thanks of the nation on behalf of the people that they are federally elected to represent to these veterans, and so they feel a passion for doing that, and the veterans will feel that too. Having the United States government in its official capacity through the elected representatives thank them for what they're doing means a lot. It really adds to that, especially when you're talking perhaps about Vietnam veteran eras, era veterans, pardon me, because those folks traditionally maybe haven't been thanked as much, and so hearing it from their member of Congress, who perhaps was a service member more recently in Desert Storm or some of the other conflicts, really can add some weight there. It can really make a difference in how a veteran receives hospice care and how they feel things at the end of life. For your hospice, it can be a profile raiser within your community. Having your senator or member of Congress come and be a part of that. Amanda, I think, will touch on the fact that there's really some community engagement and communications buzz that will go into that.
Some great opportunities for partners to really ramp up their engagement.
Absolutely. And for the member of Congress, there's that civic component, but there's also getting their name out there and being more educated on some of the things that they might not have thought about that veterans face at the end of life. We've had more than a few members of Congress who've done things like this come out of it saying, I didn't even think about the fact that PTSD might be an issue at the end of life. I had never thought of that. Thank you for enlightening me. And they really view hospice differently as a result. So it's part of that triple win. Sort of thing. Can we go to the next slide, please? So, diving down into the logistics a little bit of getting the member of Congress involved. As with anything you do, you don't want to surprise or catch off guard the patients you're serving and the veterans and their families. So check with them first. Check with if they would be okay with this. And Rebecca brought up a good point to me as we were sort of talking through this yesterday. Also check with the member of Congress. Not just that they want to be involved, because many times they do, but check to see how public they want their participation to be. We've actually had a couple cases where the member of Congress has said, guys, I'm coming in the back door. I don't want anybody but the veteran to know I'm there. I don't want this to have any feel, for this particular case, that I'm doing this for any other reason than to thank the veterans. So check with them.
And Tony, real quick, who should they check? Who should they work with within the office? There's a scheduler, right, that each member of Congress has that will schedule events and whatnot.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
There's a starting place, and it
Right.
will be the scheduler. It might be the Veterans Legislative Aid. It'll be maybe the Health Legislative Aid. Every office, every congressional office is a small business, and so they're all run a little bit differently.
Right.
Those people will most likely be your first point of contact,
Yes.
and then the member of Congress or senator usually has what you've sometimes heard referred to as a body man or a personal aide, the person who travels with them when they're driving around the state or district, and that will probably be your ultimate point of contact. But yes, it's a good point that there definitely is. You don't just try to get the senator or member of Congress on the phone.
Yeah.
There's a point person who will start answering those questions as to how the member of Congress would like to be involved. I think most folks know this, we put it right in the title, but Memorial Day is quickly approaching.
Yes,
it
it
probably
is.
feels like it's far away, but congressional schedules fill up very quick, and they are already probably planning what they want to do over Memorial Day. And there'll be several events of various types where they'll be working with veterans in their district, so you want to get on that schedule now. So start thinking about how to get them involved, and we'll talk a little bit about the actual nuts and bolts of how that process works. Can we go to the next slide, please? So what you want to do to get the member of Congress there is to craft an invite. This is generally going to be a digital letter, a PDF, if you're familiar with that format, that you email to the correct folks in the office. I should mention that we have invite templates, and I think some of the staff monitoring the chat are going to post links to those right now. And they're available on the Hospice Action Network website under Grassroots Tools. The letter should be succinct, to the point, and it should contain a couple things. First, it should be on your hospice's letterhead. It should say the time and date of the event, exactly what you'd like the senator or member of Congress to do at the event, anticipated number of people who would be on site, and media involvement, which I know Amanda will speak to that portion of it in a little while. Once you have this PDF crafted, first of all, if you have any questions about how to craft it or questions about its appropriateness, you can always come to the We Honor Veteran staff or the Hospice Action Network staff.
Absolutely.
And our email addresses will be posted at the end of this. We're happy to put eyes on a letter and look over it for you if you have a couple questions for us. You're going to take that digital copy and you're going to send it to 4 people in this case. You're going to send it to the district director. You'll send it to the Health Legislative Aid, to the Veterans Legislative Aid, and the scheduler. The email itself can be fairly brief, just sort of a dear blank, 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 blank. I work at Hospice X. Please see the attached letter. We'd like to invite the senator or member of Congress to participate in an honor ceremony coming up over Memorial Day in the upcoming recess.
And Tony, where can they find those email addresses?
Thanks, Rebecca. That's a very good point. The Hospice Action Network has all of those. We keep a political database that monitors all of the staff members who work for these offices.
That's great.
And we're happy to get you those names on a case-by-case basis. If you call the main DC office number for any member of Congress and explain that you're trying to get an invite to the member of Congress, they'll probably be able to help you as well. They'll probably give you either some phone numbers or some email addresses for the appropriate staff. And I would follow their lead on that. If they only want it to go to the scheduler or they only want it to go to the Veterans Legislative Aid, follow their lead. You know, like I said, each office is a little different, and I'd go with what they say. In some cases, and a congressional office might not have all of those 4 roles. The Health Legislative Aid might also be the Veterans Legislative Aid. And so there's a little flexibility there, but emailing all those people would hit all of the buckets to flag it in the office appropriately. There's also a good bit of follow-up that needs to happen. 1 week and probably more if you don't hear from them. I'd be surprised if you didn't. Any congressional office worth its salt is going to be pretty responsive to a constituent request of this kind. But that being said, members of Congress serve hundreds of thousands of constituents apiece on the House side, and on the Senate side, you know, Senators Boxer and Feinstein in California have over 35 million constituents. So they pay attention to the squeaky wheels. Be very polite, be very respectful, but follow up. Just an email or a phone call and say, hey, I sent this in about a week ago. Would really love to have the senator or member of Congress there. We're really trying to finalize our schedule. I'd love for you to be a part of this. Can we go to the next slide, please? So what happens if they accept it? The invite letter, the template that I think just got posted, will mention this, but you assign a point person even when you create that letter. And you make sure that that's the person who has the authority internally to confirm and set a lot of the logistics that'll have to happen, but also has the free time to interact with the member of Congress and their staff. So if you're a larger hospice, it might not be your CEO who's the best point person. Oftentimes, and I think Amanda can speak to this through her work at Hospice of the North Country, it's someone like you, wasn't it?
It's usually a director of development, which that person usually wears a few hats, the director of development, PR, and marketing. So it's usually somebody in that role.
Yep, who knows the hospice operations forwards and backwards, but may not have a caseload that would require them to try to return calls after hours and things like that.
Exactly.
So that's really important because there's a lot of logistics that'll go back and forth and that could change at a moment's notice. Congressional schedules are very fluid. They may need to change things up until the last moment, and as much as you can accommodate that while still first, of course, accommodating the veterans and their families, you want to try to do that. Prepare some leave behinds. I think these can be pretty minimal because getting the member of Congress, especially if it's their first time to your program, the whole goal is for them to see the We Honor Veterans program in action and your hospice in action, just seeing the care you're providing to constituents. So your leave behinds for this trip will be pretty minimal. We have a couple hospice-specific templates for fact sheets, just a good way to lay out the information about your program, things like your average daily census, what programs you participate in. Do you have a community palliative care program? Do you work with We Honor Veterans? How many people you employ in the general area, that kind of thing. That's a good one for the member of Congress to have. And we have another one, which is just a general backgrounder on the Medicare hospice benefit, which just tells the member of Congress a little bit more about how hospice works if they're not sure. Beyond that, I think Rebecca will probably, do you guys have any We Honor Veterans?
Absolutely. It would be a good idea to have some We Honor Veterans brochures, either one that you've made in your own hospice, or we have some that we've made and they're available on our website or through our marketplace. So that would be another really good leave behind.
Absolutely. And again, contact any of the staff members here and we'll get you those if you're not sure where they are. Can we go to the next slide, please? So once they've arrived, which may not, again, be the time they've said they're going to arrive, it's probably them and their body man or personal aide driving around the district in an SUV or something like that. Maybe the press secretary. Be aware of the fact that they may get caught in traffic, or they might show up half an hour early and be looking to talk with constituents, and you're still pinning bunting up outside. It's entirely possible that could happen. It's something you should be prepared for. It really depends on how long you have with them. I think one of the pleasant surprises we've had with the We Honor Veterans program and members of Congress is that they'll commit up front to maybe a half an hour, but when they see what this program
Right.
is all about, they make extra time. We've had folks say, I'm only going to show up for a half an hour. In fact, it was Hospice of the Piedmont wrote us just the other day and said that Bob Hurt of Virginia, the Virginia 5th, had slotted them for 30 minutes, ended up staying over 2 hours.
Wow.
Right.
Wanted
So-
to know everything. He
Yeah.
just, nope, it doesn't matter what happens next. We'll apologize to them later.
Right.
Tell me about what We Honor Veterans is doing. So you may only have 30 minutes, and
Mhm.
try to be aware of that and try to be cognizant of it. So you'll want to have everything scripted beforehand. If the member of Congress is going to be presenting flags to some veterans or family members who have veterans who have family members on service and who are part of the community, make sure that everything's as ready as it can be,
Mhm.
given the
Right.
fact that we're dealing with end of life issues, that
Mhm.
we're dealing with a day that's very emotional for veterans. Try to have your end of things not ever be the holdup,
Right.
because the moving parts that you can't control, they may go off schedule a little bit. Rebecca's going to talk about the intricacies of the ceremony itself, so I want to leave that to her. But after the event, you want to write a thank you note. And Amanda, did you want to talk a little bit about the communications aspect of that, or will you heat that a little later in the presentation?
We could chat about that right now.
Great.
I think it's really essential to make sure that you follow up with thank you notes to your member of Congress that attended the event, and then also writing a letter to the editor is a great idea. It's a great way to engage the media once again, and then also making a copy of that letter and sending it to the member of Congress to let them know that you put forth this effort and really thank them in a really public way. So I just think it's a really great idea just to continue that relationship as
Absolutely.
well, and to just keep that line of communication open for future events.
Absolutely.
So is that
That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say.
Yeah.
I know that the We Honor Veterans program has a robust reporting module, and We Honor Veterans shares everything they get that's involved with a member of Congress, with the Hospice Action Network. But make sure you let us know for a number of reasons. First, we love bragging about programs who do it right. If you're involving a member of Congress, we want to shout it from the rooftops here at the Hospice Action Network. But more than that, pardon me, we can be a resource, not only to your program, but also to the member of Congress. If you do something in the district, if you're an NHPCO member, if you're part of our organization, we are your representation on Capitol Hill. And one of the things that comes along with that is that we'll send our lobbyists into that congressional office after the event and say, hey, I heard that you met with Hospice of the Piedmont just a couple days ago, and it sounded like
Right.
you had a really in-depth discussion. Is there anything that the national organization who represents Hospice of the Piedmont can do to fill in any of the gaps? Do you want to know more about what hospice is facing? Because I think a lot of folks on the call know that, I'm not going to do too much of an advertisement for the Hospice Action Network, but there are a lot of issues on the table that we're facing right now. And if a member of Congress feels really passionately about what We Honor Veterans and hospices who participate in that are doing for their community, they're going to want to help your program. And I don't think there is a director of volunteers or a director of communications or a CEO out there who doesn't sweat every time you see a regulatory alert come out from an HPCO about what's coming down the pike. So if you help us help you, I think we can really start to make a difference.
Absolutely.
And then just one last point that Amanda touched on, and then I'm going to hand it over to Rebecca, would be to keep that relationship up. If you are lucky enough to get the member of Congress in over Memorial Day or July 4th, or even just an honor ceremony that's not pinned to a specific date, keep that relationship up. That can't be your one advocacy checkbox for the year. Hospice Action Network tends to recommend that you try to have 4 interactions with a congressional office per year. One of them can be the in-district visit. We do have the Advocacy Intensive coming up here in D.C. on July 13th and 14th, where you can learn a lot more about the work that we do and meet with your members of Congress. And the other 2 can just be as simple as phone calls or emails to your point of contact within the office. Just checking in, saying, hey, these are the issues that we're facing. If the member of Congress ever wants to know more about them, or if we can be a resource, please let us know. And what you gain by that, and what the member of Congress gains, is a level of trust that when there's a critical issue, cough, Part D, cough, they already know who you are. You're already a trusted resource on issues. And they'll be much more willing to take action on something that you've asked them to do if you don't have to preface it with, "Hi, I'm a hospice in your district. We have an urgent issue that requires the member of Congress's participation." So keep up those relationships. We have plenty of tools to help you do that. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Rebecca and Amanda.
Great. Thanks, Tony, and thanks for all of that advice and those hands-on, very tangible ways to get a member of Congress involved.
We do.
So now I want to go into a little bit about once the member of Congress has agreed and you're ready to do your ceremony, how you should go about starting that. So the first thing you always want to start with is defining your purpose and the intention of your event. And while it's very important and very great that your member of Congress is going to be there, we still want the primary goal of this to really recognize and pay tribute to the veteran and to the veteran's family and caregivers. So make sure that that remains your focus with all the other things going on, that this is all about the veteran. So as Tony was saying, make sure you check with them, make sure that they're okay with the member of Congress being there during their special day, and make sure that they are very aware of everything that's going to go on. It's also a really great opportunity for them to get to share their story. As Tony was saying, we all know that at times veterans can suffer with PTSD at the end of life. And one of the ways that that can get resolved is by sharing their story and kind of working through it. So anytime you can give them a platform or a stage where they could share their story, get a little resolution at the end of life, can be really helpful to their psychosocial care. And then another great thing that you can do is it gives you the opportunity to actually remember veterans who have died, who've been on your care before. It can be a really great bereavement activity for their family members or their caregivers to come back and let them know that the veteran's not forgotten. They meant something to this hospice, to the community, and to the country in general. So just make sure that those things remain your purpose and your focus of the event. Go ahead and switch slides. After you've defined your purpose, you can start beginning to decide who you want to invite. And of course, we want to invite that member of Congress. And as Tony said, get that invite out as soon as possible. The very next audience that you're going to want to invite is obviously the veterans and the families actually receiving care at your hospice. And I can't stress enough, just make sure that they know that this is going to be attended by a member of Congress. Make sure that they're okay with that. Then you can also begin branching out to your larger community, branch out to some assisted living facilities or nursing homes, see if they have any veteran patients that they think would be enjoy being honored at this event. If you have any relationships with American Legions or VFWs in your area, you can ask them to either come and get honored at the event, or they could actually take part in honoring those veterans, because it's really great to have other veterans honor other veterans. And then, again, as I mentioned on the previous slide, is to make sure that you invite the family members of veterans who have already died after receiving your care, because that can be just a wonderful bereavement activity for them. And now Amanda's actually going to talk about a very important audience to invite as well.
Right, the local media. So as both Rebecca and Tony have stated, we want to make sure that we have permission from the member of Congress to involve media. Can you talk a little bit about that, as far as some members prefer not to have any media?
That's right.
And then they'll let them know once
they'll be
the program
pretty upfront about that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then you just have to go with it. But more often than not, they seem okay with involving the media. So getting the permission from the member of Congress, and of course getting the permission from the veteran and the veteran's family. And just as a logistical side note, have those authorization forms signed. And we know that you know this, but just make sure that those photo authorization forms are signed and that you have those in your back pocket in case you need them. So it's just a little FYI. So contacting your local media, contact your local newspaper, if you have a local weekly in your community weekly in your community, that's another great resource. They're always looking for content, and this is really newsworthy stuff. I think that we need to remember that these are stories that the media wants to tell. So really take advantage of that. And then any TV stations that you might have, again, really great stuff for them to report. Tony had mentioned the leave behinds, and the press packet is probably very similar to that. I would include any information about your hospice organization, information about the We Honor Veterans program, and then maybe information about the veteran if they've given permission, names, and also just any other information that you think would be pertinent for the reporter to have in case they have questions. And then also, of course, leave your business card in case they need to get in touch with you afterwards. And then
sorry, ma'am,
Oh,
if
so
I could
no, it's
just
okay.
jump in for 1 second.
Sure.
One of the questions we sometimes get in this vein is, well, if I can't get, the biggest local paper
Right.
or affiliate to cover the event, is it worth it? And what we've heard is, every member of Congress reads 2 papers, and one is probably the Washington Post, but the other is their local penny saver.
yes.
They want their finger on the pulse. They don't care about whatever the newspaper is
Right.
of record for the town 50 miles away that might have a larger media market. They want to know what their constituents are reading every day. So ain't nothing wrong with being in the penny
No.
saver.
Absolutely.
They're going to care more about that. That if you get a clipping in there,
Right.
it's worth 10 times as much as some others.
Thank
And
you.
also, if you don't get any media coverage sort of on the front end, as Amanda has said, you can sort of send them pictures and
Yes.
a write-up of the story afterwards.
Right.
You can also, if that still doesn't get picked up, send those to us here at We Honor Veterans. We have a whole part of our website dedicated to sharing your stories, and we would really love that. It's just wonderful to always add content of the activities that all of you guys are doing.
That's a great plug for what we're going to be doing for Memorial Day. We're hoping to get some stories from you all and how you've involved members of Congress or even just veteran stories in general. So yes, we love having those stories. So
Absolutely.
do you have an email address that they could shoot those to?
Well, actually, we just added a online portal for that. So if you just go to the website, wehonorveterans.org, you're going to click up in the right-hand corner to share your story, and it's an automated form. You can put in a photo, you can put in a video, write up a little blurb, and those come straight to Amanda and I.
Yes, and we love them. So
Yes.
please send those. So the last point I want to make on this slide is it's great to assign a staff member to take photos of the event. Just in case your media doesn't show up, it's nice to not have to worry about it if you're the one coordinating the event, to know that there are staff that are going around and taking candid photos
Great
and
point.
whatnot. So you can create a photo library and you can use those photos for social media or any other media opportunities in the future. So definitely assign a staff member to do that, and also assign a staff member to be the point person for the media, which in most cases it would probably be you, the person that's coordinating the event. And you just want to make sure that you introduce the reporter to the veteran and the member of Congress if permission has been given, and just make that connection. So it's great to have somebody to meet the reporter when they come on site.
Absolutely. And one other part of this, if you're a smaller organization or you don't feel you have the internal capacity to have a full-time media operation while you're also running the event, while you're the one pinning the bunting, so to speak, is that your member of Congress might be able to help with this.
Right.
Every member of Congress has their own press secretary, and those press secretaries have contacts at the local penny saver. They all know those names. They know the names of the local beat reporters for their district, and I think even the letter template that we've sent mentions some of that in terms of we'd be happy to work with your press office, and if you say, look, we're too busy coordinating the event, we would welcome any help you feel like you could provide in terms of coordinating media involvement. We've had members of Congress who have had no problems with that. They're happy to be the outsourced location for some of that. So that might be a resource for you if you're strapped a little bit.
Definitely. Okay,
Great
so we'll
point.
turn it back to Rebecca.
So now that you've sort of defined your purpose of honoring the veteran, you've invited your congressman, you've invited your media, you've invited the veterans and everything, you can now start thinking about where you want to have the event and what setting it's going to be. Obviously, the number of attendees is going to play a huge role in this. If you have a large crowd coming, just make sure you have some place that's large enough to house them all. Obviously, if the weather is consistently good at where you are, you can have it in an outdoor setting. If you have, I know there's a couple of hospices that have these great outdoor gardens. You could do it somewhere like that. If you have an activity room in your organization, you can also reach out to those VFWs or American Legions. They have great halls, and they're usually very welcome to have events like this housed in there. So think of settings such as that, and then also keep in mind that people are going to have a place to park and that it's going to be handicapped accessible. And make sure that you coordinate with the congressman. If you're off the beaten path, they know exactly how to get there. The directions are clear.
That's a great point. And to add on top of that, while the handicap accessibility should absolutely come first, in the interest of expediency, it's also helpful to have a spot reserved up front for the member of Congress. And that's not for ego, it's for the fact that on Memorial Day in particular, and almost any day when a member of Congress is back in the district, they're going to be presenting, speaking, doing town halls. Probably it's not out of the ballpark on Memorial Day for them to be at 10 to 12 events that day.
Right.
So the easier you can make it for them to get in and out of what you're doing so they can serve as many constituents as possible, that's not ego, it's just understanding congressional reality, and they'll appreciate that.
Yes.
They'll remember the programs that understand that they're trying to serve the whole district. So
That's a great point. Absolutely. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. Now that you have your venue, you can begin the decoration and setup part. Very fun. So just be patriotic. You've got red, white, and blue accessories and tablecloths and napkins if you're serving any sort of food. One of the sort of best practices that we've seen is when you can plan ahead and actually contact the veterans that are going to be honored. Ask them to get some old photos of the veteran when they were active duty, maybe pieces of uniform or pens that they would allow you to use, and just make it as personalized of a venue as possible. It's always a really good way to go about it. And as Tony has mentioned, make sure you get your bunting and
can't forget the bunting.
No, it's very important. So just make it festive and make it fun, and when at all possible, try to personalize it a little bit. Let's go ahead and go on to the next slide. So now we're going to move into the service itself, and one of the key things to keep in mind is it's always best when you can have some active duty military participation. It just brings more sort of gravitas and makes the veteran feel better that this is a fellow serviceman saying thank you for what they have done.
And I can imagine they're usually pretty open to attending those types of ceremonies.
Especially if you have a relationship with the VFW or if you have a military base in your community, that's great. And then definitely if the congressman is a veteran, asking them to participate in some fashion in the actual pinning or to say a few words can be really meaningful.
Rebecca, how do you go about finding active service members? I mean, is it sort of, does it vary, or do you call up like a recruiting station in your district?
Sure. Well, it'll kind of depend. Again, I would recommend reaching out to those organizations like your VFWs, your American Legions that you already have a relationship with. With your participation in the We Honor Veterans program, you're going out and you're doing community presentations to these groups all the time. So if you already have that relationship established, then 9 times out of 10, they're going to be happy to come to your event. If you have a base or something like that in your community, that's another great one. Church groups, just asking if there's anyone from a local church group or community group who's a veteran. They're especially retired servicemen are looking to give back to in some way.
Absolutely. Cool.
And then also make sure that you have an American flag present so that you can post those colors and offer time to do the pledge and the salute.
Right.
And one new thing we've actually been recommending that has been pretty impactful is that you can actually, through your congressional office, request a flag that has been flown over the U.S. Capitol. or one of the congressional office buildings. You'll see them out there. They raise them. Each flag flies for 10 to 15 minutes. It comes back down, and another one goes up.
Oh, wow.
And you can request them to your member of Congress, either through the contact that you've made through this process, or most member of Congress's websites actually have a flag request button.
That's neat.
And you fill out an online form. You explain the purpose. There's a nominal fee per flag just to cover the cost of the flag. They're union made in America. Obviously,
Right.
they're very high quality flags. I want to say it's $25 or so. But it will have been flown over the Capitol,
Right.
and it usually comes with a letter from the member of Congress, even if they can't be there, saying, thank you so much. This was flown over the United States Capitol. Here's a letter of certification saying so.
That's
So
great.
that
What a
might
great
add lot.
addition, yeah.
Absolutely. All right, so now we're going to move into sort of the agenda of the ceremony. And again, these are just sort of suggestions. Feel free to personalize these, to do whatever makes the most sense for your hospice, for your community. But a welcome by your bereavement staff or maybe by your hospice leadership is always a good way to start. A little invocation by your chaplain. Some inspirational song readings or poetry. A lot of times veteran volunteers are really interested in taking part in this part of the ceremony.
Right.
They might be able to contribute in some way. And then this is when you could, again, with the permission, have some opening remarks done by the member of Congress. And then you'll actually move on to the physical pinning and recognition of the veterans in attendance. So again, the overall purpose of this is to acknowledge them and honor them for their service. You can ask them to share their story. I wouldn't sort of bombard them with this on the day of the event. If you want them to share their story, then talk to them a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks beforehand, make sure they're comfortable, and if so, build time in the program for them to be able to share that story, because again, it can provide a lot of resolution to any issues they might be facing. We also have some suggested language here that I won't read to you, but these slides will be available after the presentation. And again, you can feel free to tweak this, to personalize it to the veteran or to your hospice. And again, if the member of Congress is a veteran, this would be a really great passage for he or she to read. And then you can go ahead and give them the certificate or the pin. We have free downloadable and personalizable certificates available on our website. I believe the staff who are monitoring the chat are going to provide some links to this. This is just an example of the Army, but we have all of the branches of service available. You can personalize it with your organization's name and also with the veteran's name, which is a really nice takeaway, and they mean a lot to veterans or the family members. And then the two pins you'll see in the middle center of the certificate, these are actually little lapel pins. One's a little American flag pin, and then the other is a We Honor Veterans pin. And these are both available through our marketplace, which you can get through online or by calling us. And you can also get some other pins just through different community stores. So another aspect that you might want to include, depending on who you've invited. If you've invited those families of deceased veterans, you might want to have some sort of ritual of remembrance. It could be as small as having them have a little moment of silence with some pictures in the background, or you can give them a flag or a carnation. Maybe if the member of Congress would be interested in giving something like that to them, could mean a lot to those families. Or you could go as far as having them plant a memorial tree or some flowers in honor of their fallen veteran.
It's a nice touch.
Absolutely.
It really is.
So I guess, Amanda, that's kind of the service, some of our recommendations. If you have any questions, feel free to ask us, but she's going to follow up with what you should do after the event.
Yeah, so some post-event activities. Remember social media. If you have an active social media presence, use this event. Again, if you've had permission from the veteran and the families and the member of Congress, use this event to promote on your social media assets. It's a great way to put content out there and really promote your program and promote your We Honor Veterans partnership. So, and then also connect to the Member of Congress's social media account.
Absolutely.
That's because a lot of them are really active, right, Tony, on social media?
Over 98% of members of Congress are on Twitter.
Yeah.
I don't know who that 2% is.
Right.
Wouldn't want to be them.
I know.
But they're all on Facebook and Twitter and easily searchable. And there are actually some search engines that we'll put up afterwards where you
Okay.
can find those handles.
Oh, wow.
Great.
That's
At
great.
least the Twitter ones, and we'll see if we can get a link to their Facebook pages as well. I know there are several third parties out there who categorize all that stuff. So tagging them in the posts, you're right, absolutely. Because that way someone in the press shop over there
Right.
is, oh, wow, we were thanked publicly by this organization, and we were able to thank veterans as well. So
And
a
again,
great
it
point.
keeps that line of communication open. So
Yep.
it's a great way to engage again in the future. And then also, again, if you have your photos from the staff person that you assigned to take the photos and you've built your photo library, you can use those in case the media wasn't able to show up. As Rebecca had stated earlier, sending your stories and your photos to the paper, they may print them after the fact. A lot of newspapers, they're strapped for reporters. They can't send, to every single event that the community does. And they actually appreciate getting those stories, getting something that's already written, and then having the photos to go along with it. So having that photo library is really essential. And then just what we talked about before, the thank you letters, just make sure that you get those thank you letters out, because I think that's really key in keeping that relationship going, and just thanking the Member of Congress for their time, and then also thanking the veteran and their family, and
Absolutely.
so that's really essential. And I think that's it for post-event activities, and we're going to move into the case study now, Tony and Rebecca.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to give the sort of overview.
Sure, absolutely. So this is one that actually happened very recently out in Arizona, Casa de la Luz Hospice. They hosted a meeting with Congresswoman Martha McSally of the Arizona 2nd. And Congresswoman McSally is sort of an interesting case. She was, I believe, an Air Force corporal. If not, she wasn't a general. I believe she was
Was it a colonel?
colonel.
Yeah.
C-ones, I apologize. And she ran for Congress and won that seat. And she's a freshman, so she's
Okay.
only been in
Okay.
Congress for about 4.5 months at this point.
Wow.
And Casa de la Luz reached out to her more for informational purposes. But one of the great things they did, and I'd recommend if you can do this too, is before you write to your member of Congress, they really did as much of a dive into her personal history as they could. And that's where, she campaigned pretty actively as a member of the Air Force, but they dove in and kind of got some nuances about her history, the things she was interested in, and what she wanted to bring to the Arizona 2nd. And so when they did the invite, they presented it through that lens, that we want you to come, we want you to learn about hospice, but really we want you to come see what we're doing for veterans. And so I think you can see the picture here. It may be a little small. We're going to be putting up maybe a couple more pictures in the chat box, I think. Those may have gone out. Really making it about the veteran. And you can see it's the gentleman sitting in the chair there, and there was a large blanket that they presented to him as a part of this, and the Congresswoman spent a fair amount of time just talking with him, just sort of one-on-one. I think most of the staff even just left the room and gave them some time to speak service member to service member. And the Congresswoman, again, spent much longer there than she had planned to, and really came away with it with an appreciation for Casa de la Luz Hospice, but also for hospice more generally. And I think they've made some real inroads into hopefully making her a hospice champion down the road. Did you want to?
Absolutely. And when I read this story, what struck me is that since they knew she was really interested in this topic, is that they had some information for her ready in addition to the recognition ceremony, talking about their veteran-to-veteran program and letting them know that it's not just a one-day thank you that we give. This is an entire program. We're participating in this tiered recognition program, and we're doing this day in and day out for all of our veterans. It's not just a one-day Memorial Day or Veterans Day thing, and I think that can be really helpful and really meaningful when a member of Congress can come in and see that this is an ongoing commitment.
It's woven into the fabric of what our hospice does.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so they really covered all the bases that we've talked about. They had a great ceremony that was veteran-centric first and foremost, respectful, but they did the outreach beforehand, they did the research beforehand. I actually am not sure if there was press involvement. I didn't check on that. I know that they certainly sent it to us,
Right.
and submitted it through all the right channels to us.
And
but
we will promote it. We'll promote it
Absolutely.
via our social media assets,
Yep.
Hospice Action Network, and then NHPCO, and We Honor Veterans.
That's
so,
right.
Yeah.
Yep. So a good case study, and if anybody's interested in either connecting with the good folks there, we're happy to put you in touch if you'd like some pointers. I'll volunteer Carol Clark and Sherry Bailey for that. They're good as gold, and I think they'd be willing to help out anybody in the field. So we'll be happy to connect them.
Great case study. So it seems that we are at the end of the presentation. We're at the resources screen. You're going to see some great links there that you can access. And if you have any questions for Rebecca, you can get in touch with her at veterans@nhpco.org. And then if there are any specific questions for Tony, you can reach him at info@nhpcohan.org. And then if you have any questions for me regarding media for your events, you can email communications@nhpco.org. So I think we're ready for questions. We have a little over 10 minutes left.
Sure.
And I don't know if have any of our NHPCO staff received any questions?
Not at this time, but
Okay.
we're still taking questions.
We have a quiet group today.
If you have any questions for us, just type them in the
Please
chat
do.
box there, and there are folks in the room monitoring that. One of the questions we get a lot that I guess we haven't touched on is, what if I didn't vote for my member of Congress, or
Right.
what if I don't particularly agree with my member of Congress's policies, or I'm not a member of that party. And to that we really do say that politics stops at the water's edge. The member of Congress, I have simply never seen it happen where a member of Congress hasn't realized that the purpose of this is to honor the veterans in their
Right.
community. You don't see any grandstanding. You don't see anybody shaking their fist.
Right.
Not on Memorial Day. Not when there's a veteran in the room.
Yeah.
They may have a small, candid discussion with just the veteran, but it certainly would never be in a public forum. And if you see things starting to head that way, which it's entirely possible they may, we've never seen it happen, but if you're getting a vibe from the member of Congress or from their staff that they have very certain ideologies that they're going to be very vocal about, first of all, communications at nhpco.org, veterans at nhpco.org, and info@nhpcohan, call us.
Yes.
We have the resources in terms of the communications capacity to start helping you answer those questions. And we pay a very highly skilled team of both Republican and Democratic lobbyists who will have contacts in all of these offices. And again, I can't imagine it happening, but if it came down to it, NHPCO would be there to go in and say, hey, we know you're planning this event. We've heard one or two things. Can we help you at all? That's our job as a national organization. We'd be happy to do it. I don't think we'd ever have to, but we're here to do it if we can. Did you have another question?
It seems that we have a question that has come in.
Have multiple different community organizations partnered on a single event?
So the question was, have multiple community organizations partnered on one specific event?
Yes, and I think that is when it can be really successful.
Yeah.
So when you have, for those We Honor Veterans partners on the call, when you have your hospice veteran partnership or you have your coalition in your community, to maybe go at this through a group way and have those those VSOs and your VA present and other hospices even, or invite those community assisted living facilities or nursing homes. And I can imagine that would be even more of a plug for the congressman to come. If you can have more than just one group present, and that he can sort of go to multiple organizations and at one time, it's not only benefits more veterans because they'll be able to have more veterans in attendance, but you're more likely to get media attention and attention from your member of Congress.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Did you want to?
No.
Okay, I was just going to say that, and that you're absolutely right in that the member of Congress not only will be enticed to come by hearing from more constituents, but also your words as a group carry more weight. So if you're all talking about the We Honor Veterans program and the hospice patients that it serves, the member of Congress is going to want to know more about hospice, because look at all these constituents that hospice has brought together for me and for the veterans in my district. So
Absolutely.
there's a lot of upside to it.
Great. Karen, do we have any other questions?
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment. If last call for questions, if you have any questions, please send them through the chat and we will be happy to answer. Otherwise, any last thoughts?
I had a question for Rebecca.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Certainly, I would never want to put anybody on the spot, but are there things that you might suggest avoiding in terms of putting together a ceremony? Are there things that
Question.
could be triggers or things that have just not been well received by veterans that are just maybe not the right direction to go?
Sure, and I think some of this comes to knowing your patients, knowing who's going to be there. If they are suffering from any psychosocial issues, PTSD, anything like that, you're going to want to be very timid. You wouldn't necessarily want a 21 gun salute. That can definitely be a trigger. Really catching them off guard and asking them to share a story. And again, if you don't ask that for that request ahead of time, that could easily sort of, trigger an unhappy memory when really we don't want that to come up in ceremonies like this. So it's going to be different for every single veteran patient, but just knowing your audience, knowing the veterans, knowing what they can and cannot handle is really important, and avoiding over personalizing it when they're not ready for it, or sudden sounds, movements, that sort of thing can be triggers.
Okay, good. That's good
a
to know.
really
question.
good, yeah, and it's good to involve members of your IDT team who are working with this patient on a daily basis and ask them, any questions specifically to that, and make sure that they know what's going on and they can give you the, the personal details of that patient, and
Absolutely.
and so you can make sure that all of that is taken into account.
And I know there's
Mindful.
been at least one instance when a veteran fell ill and was not able to attend the larger ceremony, but the member of Congress actually went specifically to that person's bed just to make it a one-on-one ceremony. It doesn't have to have a big event, but just so that they're still recognized.
Absolutely.
And if the member of Congress doesn't have time to do that, you can still, members of your team can still do that and make it more of a one-on-one recognition.
And I'd be very surprised that a member of Congress didn't find the time to go make the one-on-one contact,
Absolutely.
especially once they've seen the rest of the event.
Okay, we have one more question.
Besides flags, are there any other items that we can obtain from our congressperson?
So the question was, besides flags, are there any other items that can be obtained from the member of Congress?
Absolutely, and I think the hospice can have a hand in that, or the member of Congress may even have some thoughts about it. You can get a letter from the member of Congress personally thanking that veteran, written on congressional stationery that they don't give out to anybody else. It's for their use only, and it carries the full effect of the United States government with it. And so, if the member of Congress can't be there, it's a great question that could be a wonderful backup.
Right.
Here's a letter from the member of Congress to you. And perhaps if the hospice has the ability to get that framed beforehand, to be presented in that manner.
Absolutely.
Those would be the big two, I'd say.
Right.
But again, the member of Congress may have some specific thoughts if they were in the service themselves. They may have some things or know of some resources that they'd be interested in providing for that.
That's great. Okay. Well, we're going to be wrapping up soon. So any final thoughts from either of you?
I think I'll just kind of bring everybody back to my sort of original focus is to, with involving the media, involving your member of Congress, don't forget what the purpose of the event is. The purpose of this event is to offer up one final thank you to the veterans on your care, and make sure that they're recognized and that the event stays about them, about their families.
Absolutely. I think I would absolutely echo that up and down the line, it is about honoring veterans and patients and families on hospice care. My only other thought, I think, would be that this doesn't have to take place on Memorial Day or July 4th, and I know a lot of We Honor Veterans ceremonies don't, but if for whatever reason the member of Congress can't make it, or you don't have an event particularly planned for that day, I think all of these tidbits work year round, so feel free to use them as you see fit. But you know, thank you so much for all that you do for veterans,
thank you.
and you know, if we can help at all here at NHPCO, that is our full-time job, is to help folks like you honor the veterans that are on your service and help you make the connections with your members of Congress.
So contact info for each of us again, Tony.
info@nhpcohan.org.
Mine's a little easier. veterans@nhpco.org.
And I can be found at communications@nhpco.org. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Rebecca and Tony, for some
Thanks.
awesome information. It was really great. And please send us your stories. We do have that great new easy feature on the We Honor Veterans website. Please send us your stories and your photos. We want to tell your stories, and we want to tell the veterans' stories. So please send us those whenever you can. So thank you very much, and we hope you all have a great day. Thanks.
Thanks
Thanks so
everybody.
much.